And you're welcome back. Let's get started, shall we? And this time to turn the spotlight on a troubling revelation that's sending shockwaves across the African diaspora, particularly among Nigerians. The United Kingdom has just published a list of unclaimed estates belonging to deceased individuals who died without a will, and at least 58 of them are Nigerians. These are properties, pensions, and assets that could be worth millions, now at risk of being permanently forfeited to the British Crown if not claimed by next of kin. The implications are profound, not just financially, but emotionally and culturally.
Yes, indeed. Question is, are we facing a crisis of estate planning within the diaspora? What does this mean for families back home? And what role can government agencies like the Nigerians and Diaspora Commission, NITCOM, play in reclaiming these lost legacies? Well, we'll be unpacking all that and more with our guests this morning. First off, we are going to be having Tosin Oyediran, a journalist who has been tracking reactions from within Nigeria regarding these issues, and also Blessing Tifase, an international journalist based in the UK following diaspora affairs. In the studio here with us, we have Mr. Olukayode Okenla. He is partner Simon Bethel's solicitors. You're welcome in the studio, sir.
Welcome, sir.
And welcome to our guests via Zoom.
Welcome. Let me start with you, Mr. Tosin Oyediran. We understand that you broke the news here in Nigeria. The story of Nigerians losing unclaimed estates in the UK has sparked quite a number of reactions. Just tell us the beginning of the story and what's really at play here. What's at stake?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yes, I was suffering. Can you hear me, please?
Loud
yes,
and clear.
we can.
Yeah, good morning. It's a routine that I do check the UK website, and that very day I was checking the website and I saw that it has been updated. But truly, about 2-3 years ago, I was using the same UK government website, and it was then, I think around 2022, that I discovered that every day there is a list, a bona vacantia list, that is ownerless goods, properties, assets, estates, even pensions and the likes that are unclaimed. So in 2022, I discovered that there is this particular record called the bona vacantia that is kept under the Treasure Solicitor Department, Treasure Solicitor's Office rather. And I discovered that there is this list that is kept, and it is updated every day. The list is updated every day, and it's as a result of people who die intestate without leaving a will or a proper documentation that, oh, this is a next of kin that can claim anything that is mine, that is my asset, or their asset rather, their asset, their wealth, or anything. So I've been keeping a very close eye on it since 2022, and I didn't report anything about it in 2023, 2024. Not until was it last month or earlier this month, I stumbled upon it again, and I felt that, oh, let me report this again, owing to the fact that in recent times there were reports of Nigerians who died at their workplace, or Nigerians who died at their homes. And I was wondering, what if these people who died at their workplace, people who died after doing their shift or when they return home, what if they die and they do not have a will? This means that this number of Nigerians will add up to those who are already tagged as bona vacantia, whose properties and assets are already tagged as bona vacantia. And that is what actually prompted me that very day to do the story, and what the roles that their families, the roles that the government and the likes can do to ensure that these properties do not actually become totally forgone, that it does not become a property of the crown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tosin. In the studio here with us, Mr. Okenla, I'm hoping that you can give us an idea of the processes for immigrants to actually acquire property outside of the country, especially in this case, the UK.
Okay, first and foremost, let me give you this scenario. Nigerians traveled a lot to the UK for various reasons. You could recall in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, till today. So at every point in time, you may recall several years ago, there were a lot of Nigerian companies who were operating, Nigerian banks operating in the UK. The likes of the Nigerian companies, the likes of Odua, the likes of very high net worth Nigerian companies operating in the UK. So there's a lot of traffic of Nigerians to United Kingdom, either as students, as business men and women, as partners for business collaborations, and so many so forth. So there are different scenarios. So you have this situation wherein either assets, bank accounts, shares, investment units, and all sorts of things have been acquired by Nigerians in the UK. And they run into several millions of pounds and everything. So the problem you now have is, one, some people don't have a will. Some people live a recluse life. You understand? They get themselves isolated. Some people also, for various reasons as well, maybe because of immigration status, have actually acquired some of these properties when they have not regularized their papers. And some have actually returned back to Nigeria. Some have died. Some have relocated back to Nigeria. Some have died. Some have, for various reasons, cannot get back to the UK. So you have all these abandoned properties. And what government does, because there's a transparency framework. Financial institutions in the UK, upon receipt of death of anyone, upon also local councils, upon receipt of certain information, for example, if you have a property that have not been used for quite some time, left fallow, you understand, after investigation, they will notify the government agencies. And of course, they will act on that. Pension funds and so many things. So in cases, what has happened here, basically because people have not claimed some of these. For example, maybe there's no next of kin. Nobody has actually come forward to claim some of these properties. So you have what we refer to as a government legal department called the Treasury Solicitors. And under that division, there's what you have the Bona Vacentia division. So obviously what it means basically is the government now takes over some of these assets and find a way. Unless you still have years to claim within 30 years. You understand? But you need to show your link, your nexus to those properties. Okay. For immigrants, it was easier in those days for Nigerians to open a bank account. So you could just imagine multiple bank accounts in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s. Some of them are lying dormant. Although you have what we refer to dormant asset schemes or refund claims, wherein when an asset becomes, for example, a bank account becomes so dormant, you understand, it triggers some sort of scheme wherein those dormant assets are given to a company called Refund Limited or whatsoever. So there are multiples of such assets in the UK by Nigerians.
I've got more questions, but I'll reserve it. Please.
Yeah, Mr. Tifase, I have to ask you, right? I was talking to Mr. Kaide here just outside before we started this interview, and I was saying that if there's one thing that the British is known for is bureaucracy, and also that's where we got our ties from, and because of our past ties to Britain as well, we also have that bureaucracy there and that red taping. And so I have to ask you about the diaspora. If the bureaucracy and the red taping is one of the reasons why we're seeing this unclaimed estates and this lack of documentation and wills.
I think it's more of a case of accountability and transparency on the side of the UK government, because the government could have easily denied or just turned a blind eye to all of these assets, or probably just giving them to charity. But they've come out and they've given the legal department, the government in the UK has a legal department called the Bona Vacantia Division, popularly known here as the BVD. So this division of the government is known to administer estate properties or houses owned by individuals who have died without a will and without blood relatives. Now, there's a formula for this actually. It's not just, it doesn't just go directly to the government when a person dies without a will. So there's a list of persons who can come forward to claim ownership or entitlement to these properties, not just anyone, not just a friend. So the first is probably the husband or the wife, a civil partner, children, mother or father, brothers or sisters, half brothers or sisters, grandparents, uncles and aunts, and half uncles or aunts. So these people, wherever they are, can come forward to claim entitlement to these properties when someone dies without a will here. So I think it's more a case of accountability from the government, because this body, the DVD, actually provides as much genealogical information as possible on the site. And like your first guest said, it is updated every single working day. And the last update was actually on the 4th of April. So it's pretty recent and pretty much updated regularly. Any missing things or any missing column you see there, trust me, the government does not have that information. So they've done their due diligence to make as much findings as they can, and they're providing this list. Generally, any single person can go on gov.uk and download this list. So you can see your name is there, not your name. If your relative is a lost relative is there, and you know that you're actually on the entitlement, you are the entitled relative, you can come forward, play things, provide documents, necessary documents, and claim your entitlement.
I hate
so I
to
think
ask.
it's more a case of accountability and transparency from the UK government.
Speaking of accountability from the British government and transparency, all of these persons that have been listed that have unclaimed estates, don't they have bank accounts? Because I know when you're opening details, whether it's your health insurance or your bank accounts or whatever it is, there's always a contact or emergency contact there. Shouldn't they be looking at those information to be able to reach out? Because there are persons who leave villages that don't have access, they don't have access to internet, but they're not aware, and they go all the way, because there are Nigerians that have left to the diaspora and have cut ties with their families completely. What happens to those persons? I'm going to throw that question to Tosin.
Thank you very much. To answer that, what is obtained in the UK? There is proper documentation over there, and there is they have the death and bereavement certificate, and they keep records of death, and not just only death, they also keep records of death. Now, to answer your question, in some cases or in some scenarios, some of these properties are not individually owned. Some of these properties are not individually owned. Some of these properties are jointly owned. In some cases, it could be the husband and the wife. And the thing about it is that if at the point of death, it is just one of the two parties or multiple parties who own the property that dies, then if the other party are unaware of what to do, if they are unaware of what to do and what role to play immediately to make sure that there is this form that is called the deceased joint proprietorship form. And that is in the case of if one of the proprietors or if one of the owner dies, this DJP form has to be filled and updated. This DJP form has to be filled and updated. In some cases, I would say maybe lack of awareness or ignorance of the UK laws might be an affecting factor. And we've had it worse, that in some cases the two joint owners, the two joint owners in some cases may die together.
Okay.
Let's imagine a man and a woman who dies in a car crash. If the two joint owners die together, or if the two joint owners, if the other surviving owner died within a short span to the other party's death, and they've been unable, or they are unable to perfect. They are unable to perfect this DJP ownership form. They are unable to shift the ownership from the from the deceased to the one who is alive. Then it becomes a problem. So I think this is one of the key factors to look into. So ownership, lack of ignorance of the UK law, I think is a very serious factor, and there are other things, but let me keep it at that for now.
Right.
Ms. Okenla, I'd like to shift your attention to something called proceeds of crime. I've got two instances I'd like to describe here. One of them is personal. My name is Maziakwono Appeal. It's shortened to Mazino because it's difficult for most people to pronounce.
Maziakwono.
Thank you, Judith. Good work. But mostly for people who are foreign, it's difficult. So I may need to change my name to Mazino just so it is pronounceable by foreigners. In the course of doing this, some of the assets that I might acquire might go with this name, Mazino Appeal. Now, when that happens, I have actually fallen under this legislation that, well, it's called proceeds of crime, where my true identity does not represent on the documents for the assets. Yeah. Then there's also proceeds of crime when it comes to immigrants acquiring assets before they are legalized. What happens in these cases when these people pass on?
Okay. First and foremost, let's get the issue of the proceeds of crime. Issue like provenance of funds to get properties, committing frauds to get properties, giving false representations to get properties to acquire assets or to acquire identity. So obviously, when you look at the scope of what we refer to the mechanism for proceeds of crime, is big, it's quite very complex. Illegal funds from Nigeria used to acquire assets or whatsoever. But you may, for example, you've given a scenario. When you acquire a property, you must have an identity to acquire a property. Obviously, some may have acquired properties in the name, in analysis whatsoever.
Exactly.
Some may have acquired properties when they have no status. As at that time, they've acquired properties. Some may have acquired properties through third parties because they don't want people to know that they have these assets, public officials in government whatsoever. So you have different scenarios when it comes to proceeds of crimes. But main issue is provenance of funds. You know, at every stage, when you want to acquire properties or you want to acquire assets, you understand, the issue of money laundering is now much more emphasized. Now, you may have a scenario where, as at the time you acquire a property, you do not have a status. So you've acquired a property in a name that you have absorbed for purposes of using somebody's identity or just creating an identity to acquire those assets as at the time. It's a very complex situation, but I think there are legal ways, you understand. So far you can prove that the provenance of funds, you can change your name, you can do deed of change name and whatsoever. And then, but one thing that is quite very, very important, at every point in time, you must make sure that you seek legal advice or you seek professional advice. You update your assets whatsoever. Yes, I can give you different scenarios. There are people who were Nigerians, who maybe acquired properties and they were deported, maybe for fraud, for drugs, whatsoever. So you have different scenarios like that. You have people who have actually also, at one time or that, they've acquired properties. They live a very, I recalled many years ago of a Nigerian who came in the UK when in the 60s, acquired legally, acquired nice property in West London, acquired a lot of shares, a lot of investment units, but cut himself away from the family, you understand? And I think in the course of that, when he came into the UK, I think as he was working with the railway, British Railway, and as at that time. So I think they had to contact the next of kin, and it was quite very difficult to contact the next of kin in Nigeria. You could see a Nigerian who came in before independence, and he has done very well for himself. So they were able to contact with his sister who have actually died. Oh. You understand? So basically, the children of the sister got in touch, and So now coming to your question, it's a very complex situation. It's a very complex situation. But I feel, number one, but right now, people are now beginning to get aware
of it's a case of awareness currently.
Yes, number one. And for cultural issues too as well. Some people don't want to tell people where their assets are and whatsoever. So and some people, because of the divorce, whatsoever, you want to make sure that you hide your assets whatsoever. So there's a lot of scenarios. Okay. Public officials, people, and I've also seen scenarios where someone who has acquired one or two things in the UK came to Nigeria, died. Maybe he's worked so hard so much and he died in Nigeria, and he doesn't have any relative in the UK. You understand? So you have different scenarios like that. Okay. But there's always a framework for how best to go about it. And I always tell people, seek professional advice. And at every point in time, make sure you do your will. Make sure that make sure that you have information that you can give to trusted relatives about properties that you have acquired.
Okay. Right. I could have a relative, only that it could be like 3 times removed, if you think about it.
Oh, the story of the African prince there.
Oh, yes, it is. It's just one of them. But Ms. Tifase, before we wrap up this discussion, I'd like to come to you. And by the way, one of our producers says you look a lot like one of our reporters here, one of our correspondents here, and that's Omolala Ololade. There we go. You look exactly like her. And then looking at you now, I see it. I kind of see it. I kind of see it with the bob. But Mr. Tosin, let me just ask you, right? You are an international journalist covering diaspora issues. The numbers keep growing till, as of yesterday and even till today, the numbers will continue to grow, not just in Nigeria, not just for affecting Nigerians, but also Africa at large. Let's talk about the diaspora issue and how we can both connect, because what we see here is a disconnect from Africans and diaspora and here in Nigeria, in Africa, on the continent. How can we connect so we can, have our collective access to our estates or, assets? There we go.
Right. I think first up, I'll just touch quickly on what you mentioned earlier about emergency contact. I just wanted to clarify something about that. I'm not dispelling what Tosin said earlier, but just to clarify it a bit more. So if the UK government has brought this list up or this report out of themselves, they won't put under any pressure, and they're given a 30-year framework, a 30-year time frame for persons to come forward and claim this exit. I think they should be uploaded for this sort of transparency. I'm yet to see any other country, maybe the United States, I don't know, that would do something like this and leave this kind of a gap for people to come forward and claim this property. So it's not them trying to see millions of properties that do not belong to them. It's them trying to administer this property to the rightful owners or rightful entitled relatives. Now, about what you're saying, right here, there are private companies called genealogists, actually, who work independent of the BVD, so they could contact you in Nigeria or whatever country there's anyone affected, and according to the list, to say, oh, your name is on social list, and your emergency contact has been exhausted. So the first point would be, even as much as someone thinking, so I remember a couple of years ago when I painted, in the shopping mall, the next thing I saw when I opened my eyes was my husband standing beside me. So, and that's because he is my emergency contact. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not a talk of, God forbid, someone dying. So the first thing they would do is to contact or to search for your emergency contact. So they've done all of that before they've done that and even much more, trying to trace whoever might be entitled before putting these names on the list. Mm-hmm. So these companies, like going back to the genealogists now, would go to contact this person because they want to make profit. They're going to ask for a share. They're going to ask for a percentage. They're not working for the government. They're trying to work for you to say your name looks like a relative of yours has passed and has left physical property right here in the UK. You want to come forward and provide physical documents, you know how to. The Legion guide whoever is involved to provide necessary documents to claim these properties. And the government is actually encouraging the use of these private companies. And so I think the best way, that's the best thing they can do, to do their due diligence, provide a list, make it secular, anyone can download and view this list. I think it's now the hope of the Nigerian government and every other government who have names on this list to popularize the names, make it, as popular as possible, make it in all the villages, maybe in newspapers, and whatever means you have. If they've done their own work here to provide this list, it's left with these African governments or whichever countries involved to say, is this you? Are you a relative of this person who has died in such a country? You might need to go claim money over there, and probably help those may not have the whereabouts to go to provide the documents and go for the claim.
All right.
All right. Well, I must say thank you to our guest today, to Mrs. There we go, Mrs. Tosin, Mrs. Blessing Tifase, and there's also, of course, Mr. Tosin Oyediran, who is the local journalist who broke this news, and also to our guest here in the studio, Mr. Kayode Okenyola, legal practitioner. Thank you, gentlemen and lady. It's over. Close the curtains. Go check the list, and also ask your family. This is where you need to get records. I know family 3 removed is on that list. I just have to go and trace my roots. But thank you again for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, and I'm that African prince they've been looking for. Thank you very much, everybody.